Hi guys, so today's little lesson is on pulling manes. Every horse kind of like us. Some have thin manes, some have really thick manes. In this instance, this guy has a really long mane. So what he just did is definitely a habit of what some horses will do when they think or know that you're going to pull their mane. What we do not do is cut it. Okay, so if you cut it like that, it's going to look funny. You're not going to get an even cut, and it's still really thick. You know, it's going to look awful. Now, I did that because I'm going to pull a little bit shorter. I'm pulling all of them a little bit shorter than I normally would because then I don't have to do it quite so frequently. But what I am doing in the spring is thinning them as well, because when you pull the hair out, I know it sounds kind of medieval. They tell us that it doesn't hurt, but I can tell you there are some that are hypersensitive to it. Some of them, as soon as they start hearing it. So I'm thinning a little bit because this is fairly thin down here. Hair takes a beating in the winter from blankets. Some of them have a bald spot right here where their hoods and their blankets connect. Some just get rubbed down here. So I tend to keep this thicker anyway because it's going to get abused a little bit when you start blanketing or putting sheets on them. I'm feeling it like this, and I'm like, okay, it's going to start getting just a little thick as we go up, which is normal. You know, their crest at the top is thick. The crestier they are, the more mane you have, sometimes the harder it is to pull out. So thinning it, you would go up. I'm bracing the teeth of the comb just against his neck, and I'm pulling upward, and I can feel it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but at the very, very end, you'll see the roots when it comes out of his neck. Sometimes they're a little bit of a different color. It's usually lighter. And I'm pulling because I've had a lot of time. I'm not having to rush through it. So if something is a little sensitive about it and I don't know him and he's being good, I might take my time and do it in 2 days because you want them to cooperate. So I can take the time. Now, if I'm shortening it, I'm going to about the length that I want it to be, knowing that I'll probably razor some of it. I wrap it around my comb and I pull up. Notice that I'm standing on a stool. If I were standing on the floor, I would be pulling down, so the hair is not going to come out as easily. Pulling it up or at the level of the crest. I may grab a bigger hunk, but I don't expect all of that to come out because that's going to hurt. So I hold on to the longest part and pull. And if it doesn't come, then I ease off a little bit and only take what came out easily. Can they bleed? They certainly can. I don't think we notice it as much on horses with color. When I pull Poncho's mane, because he's not really a gray, he's a paint, so his skin is pink, he's super sensitive, he bleeds. So I'm a little more sensitive to those guys, but I'm not saying that the other guys don't. We just don't notice it. And when I say bleed, just little tiny dots of blood out of the area that you've pulled the hair out of. So he just told me by shaking his head that, you know, he preferred that I take a smaller piece. So here's the proof, you know, smaller pieces and a little bit, and he didn't shake his head. So he's telling me, you know, I don't mind listening to them because you learn a lot. Like us, some have a higher tolerance of pain than others. Because I'm not convinced that this is the most pleasant thing in the world to do. And yet we have to. You know, when we braid, if they never got thinned out, or you just cut it like this, those braids would look like big giant pom-poms on their neck. And we'll work on that later this month. You want your braids to look beautiful, and he's got a long neck, so not uncommon for this long neck once I do it. Now Katie would get mad at me if I left it that long because she wants all of them to look uniform, so that's why my mane's got to have the same consistency and not be real thick at one end and super thin at the other. And his mane's going to wind up being about the length of the comb. I'm going to take into consideration though that if they're like Connor is one. Connor's very cresty, like the top of his neck looks like a hoop. So, and his very thick. So his braids are going to be a little bit thicker. So I might pull his mane a little bit different. I want to hide, you know, when horses have what we call not great necks, the mane, if you leave it a little longer, hides that. It makes his neck look a little more in proportion. So doing Connor's super, super short only accents the fact that he's got a big old thick crusty neck. So when I'm razoring, okay, so this is all plenty thin.